Warning. Major spoilers for the story of Red Dead Redemption 2 are in this video. If you've not yet fully completed the main story, you should click off this video right now. Been a while since I've done that. Anyway, hello everyone. So recently I finally finished chapter 6 in Red Dead Redemption 2, so now I can make this video at last. For those of you who don't know, this video is a follow-up to a video that I made this time last year talking about my second playthrough of Red Dead Redemption 2 and what it was like to revisit it after so long. If you haven't watched that video, I'd watch it now and watch this video later, because in that video I talked a lot about being back on Red Dead in general, and I also talked about my thoughts on chapters 1, 2 and 3. But now that I've been back on Red Dead for a good while, I'm still going to be talking about some of the general things I've noticed, but this video is mainly going to be talking about the story from chapter 4 to chapter 6. And before I get into this video, I feel like I definitely have to preface this video by acknowledging that it's been an entire year since my last video. It's been criminal how much I've neglected Red Dead over the past year. Like, if you think about it, over the past entire year, I've only completed 3 chapters in this game. When on my first playthrough, I finished the entire story in less than 4 months. I haven't completely abandoned Red Dead, but the times that I played it over the past year have been way too few and far between. It's something I'm going to touch on a lot, particularly in the end of this video, because it definitely has impacted how I feel about my second playthrough of Red Dead Redemption 2. So I just wanted to say that before I got into this video, because most of these missions that I'm going to be talking about, I did months ago, and some I nearly did a year ago, so just bear that in mind while watching this video. Now I know I covered chapter 3 in the last video, but I have to mention this because I didn't in the last video as I hadn't done it yet, and that's the final mission in chapter 3, the one where you burn the Braithwaite Manor down. Easily top 3 missions in the game. There's so many incredible things in it. The music, which gives you goosebumps, the intense action, the gorgeous visuals, how everyone is framed perfectly when you walk up to the manor. I loved every second of that mission. My favourite thing about it is that it's probably the only mission in the whole game where the entire gang is 100% unified and they're all on the same page with the exact same goal in mind throughout the full mission. And it feels incredible. When everyone is taking off to go to Braithwaite Manor together, it's just an indescribable feeling that you can only really understand when you play it for yourself. The whole gang bonds together under the amazing leadership of Dutch to work against a common enemy, and right here it was Agent Milton and Ross, and it's so satisfying to see, especially when you've already played the game and you know how divided the gang becomes in the later half of it. It's brilliant to see them all work together flawlessly for one time. So yeah, I just had to talk about that mission because it's one of the very best missions in the game, and I didn't get to mention it in my last video. So now starting where I left off in the last video, chapter 4. To be honest, I think chapter 4 is one of the weaker chapters in the game. It's still a good chapter, and the whole plotline with Bronte is by no means boring, but compared to the other chapters in the game, I think it's one of the less interesting ones. The setting as well, it's not as drastic of a change as the other chapters. If you think about it, in every single chapter, your location changes a lot, and you move to a completely different setting than where you were before. In chapter 1, you're in the Snowy Mountains, which is in Amberino. In chapter 2, you're on a cliff in the Heartlands, which is in New Hanover. In chapter 3, you're on a peninsula overlooking Flatiron Lake in Lemoyne. In chapter 5, you're in an entirely different fucking country, and when you do come back, you're in the swampy region of Lockheed. In chapter 6, you're by the caves of northern New Hanover. In the first epilogue, you're on a ranch in Big Valley, West Elizabeth. And in the second epilogue, you're in a home that you built in the Great Plains, which is in West Elizabeth. All these camps feel totally different from one another because of their stark contrast in the setting of each of them, and how far apart they are from one another. But in chapter 4, you just move from Clemens Point, which is in Scarlet Meadows in Lemoyne, to Shady Belle, which is also in Scarlet Meadows in Lemoyne, and they're just down the road from each other. Now, I'm not saying they're exactly the same to each other, because they're definitely not, the most notable difference being Shady Belle has an actual house there, but aside from that, they do feel very similar, and especially since both of those chapters are back to back to each other, it makes it feel like the transition from chapter 3 to chapter 4 has the least change. That might not make sense to a lot of you, but it's something that I was thinking of while making this video. But don't think that I don't like chapter 4. It's still a great chapter with great missions. My favourites are the Gilded Cage, where Arthur, Bill, Hosea and Dutch attend a party held by the mayor in Saint Denis. The thing I like the most about this mission is that it's really different to the other missions in the game, where you go to a certain place, shoot a bunch of people or cause some mayhem in one way or another, and then leave. But in this mission, you don't shoot a single person, and you're just walking around looking for clues, which is a nice change. Also, it's so weird seeing Hosea, Dutch, Arthur and Bill all dressed up in fancy suits instead of their normal clothes we usually see them in. Revenge is the dish best eaten is another mission that's great. This is the mission where the gang invades Bronte's mansion. It's satisfying in the short term killing Bronte and all his men, but the second time round I knew that this mission causes the Pinkertons to know that the gang are around Saint Denis, and to be prepared for the gang to rob the Saint Denis bank, which made it a bit less gratifying. My favourite part of this mission is when Bronte offers $1,000 to whoever kills Dutch right there and then, expecting the gang to jump at that opportunity, and no one takes him up on his offer, and they all just stare at him in confusion. It goes back to what I was saying earlier about the gang sticking together, and it's so satisfying to see. And my final favourite mission of chapter 4 is banking the old American art. The second time around, when you know Jose and Lenny are going to die, it's so painful because you just have to sit there and watch them die, and there's nothing you can do about it. With Lenny's death, since it doesn't happen during a cinematic and it happens while you can control Arthur, a small part of me thought that maybe I could prevent his death. And if you see in the gameplay, I had my guns aimed where I knew the two guards would come out, ready to shoot them. And when I shot them, it seemed like I got them before they got Lenny, but somehow they still shot him. But even though I was saddened by Hosea and Lenny dying, there were some parts in the mission that were just impossible to not enjoy, like when you blew up the wall and it goes all slow-mo. And if you're watching this video, you know that that's not even all that happens in this mission. It's a fucking crazy mission. Some members of the gang hop on a boat which goes down, and they end up in a completely different country, which I'll talk about in the next section because that's the start of chapter 5. I remember so well the first time I played this mission. I couldn't believe all the stuff that happened, and I literally had to take like an hour to process what just happened. I couldn't believe that Hosea died, and I thought for sure that he would make it to the end of the game. He just seemed so untouchable, and he lived through so much that I thought he could live through some more. I remember also thinking on my first playthrough that the part where Charles runs to distract the guards so that the others can get on the boat, I thought that he died there. Grandma is very controversial in the Red Dead Redemption 2 community, and understandably so. It's very different to the other chapters in the game, and while some people enjoyed that and find it refreshing to have a change like that, the majority of players feel like it's just out of place with the rest of the game. Personally, while I think the missions in Guarma are enjoyable to play through and there's some elements of the change that I like, in terms of story I think Red Dead 2 would be better without Guarma, or if Guarma was handled better. There's a lot of things wrong with it. One of my biggest problems with it is that it's a beautiful island and it's a gorgeous change in scenery, but aside from looking around the tiny playable area and finding some new wildlife for about 5-10 minutes, there's absolutely zero incentive to free roam. There's no stranger missions, no encounters, there's so many restrictions on your guns, your supplies, and the places you can go, and if you even try to step foot in certain places, you get shot by an invisible sniper. And also, when I was free roaming around the area, just minding my own business, taking pictures of flowers, I run over to the most normal looking spot ever, only for this to happen. It doesn't sound loud there, but when you're just free roaming and it's all quiet and you're not expecting anything out of the ordinary to happen, and then that shit pops up out of nowhere, it scares the bollocks out of you. So since there's practically no free roam you can do, it makes you want to rush through the story missions as fast as possible. And speaking of story missions, after doing the third mission in chapter 5, it automatically transitions into 4 whole different missions that you have to do all in one sitting, which takes a whole hour in total. Overall, Guarma just doesn't really fit in with the rest of the game. It seems like cut content or content that wasn't 100% complete, and in the grand scheme of the Red Dead Redemption 2 story, Guarma is pretty much pointless. A few minorly important stuff happens, like Dutch needlessly killing the old woman and Arthur beginning to seriously question Dutch's sanity and his plans, but both those things could have been replicated in the normal setting, and Guarma was just not necessary. So even though I enjoyed the missions and it's a relatively small part of the story, I think that Guarma is definitely the weakest and most forgettable part of Red Dead Redemption 2's story. But before I finish talking about Guarma, let me play you one of my favourite quotes in the entire game.
Oh, I got you now, you bastard.
We are all bastards, my friend.
Good old Dutch. That's going to be on my gravestone. But aside from Guarma, there's some other very important and amazing missions in chapter 5. Firstly, when you come back from Guarma and you ride the horse back to Shady Belle with Unshaken in the background, I can't play the clip with the music in it because the last time I did that I got copyright claimed, but it's another one of those beautiful moments in this game, and even though it's like 6 minutes of just riding a horse, your eyes can't leave the screen. And when you eventually find the others in La Quay, and Milton and his men arrive, and Sadie throws Arthur the gun, who kicks open the door and shoots all of Milton's men with the intense Fleeting Joy theme in the background, one of the most adrenaline rushing parts in the entire game. And then the final most important mission in chapter 5, and one of the most important missions in the game, is when Arthur gets diagnosed. And even though I knew on both playthroughs that Arthur gets tuberculosis, and even if you didn't know, before this mission he coughs a lot and you don't exactly need to be paying close attention to know that he has something wrong with him, it's still hard to watch this scene. But at the very least, I was happy that this time I got the honourable walkout with the book instead of the low honour one with the wolf that I got on my last playthrough. Heading into Arthur's final chapter, I noticed on my second playthrough that chapter 6 is very much Arthur's chapter. And that might sound obvious because every chapter is technically a chapter of Arthur's, but no other chapter feels more important to Arthur than chapter 6. In chapter 6, we see Arthur attempt to right his wrongs and make amends with the people he hurt in one way or another and to try and help as many people as possible. He kicks out Leopold Strauss from the camp after seeing firsthand how his loan shark business affected the people he specifically targeted. He supports Rainsfall and Eagle's Flies to the best of his ability. He aids Captain Monroe in escaping after being persecuted by the army. He gives Edith and Archie Downs the funds to escape Ansburg and live someplace else. He assists Sadie in fulfilling her wish to finish off the remaining O'Driscolls. And most importantly, he advises John to leave the gang with his family and start a new life elsewhere, and greatly helps him do so. There are some nice little things that happen in chapter 6. It was satisfying seeing Colm O'Driscoll meet his end and seeing Cornwall get finished. And if you were to think back to the start of the game, Colm O'Driscoll and Cornwall were the two men the gang hated the very most, so you'd think that their deaths must have felt amazing and solved all the gang's problems. But the thing that Red Dead does so well is make you feel exactly like Arthur. You just don't care. By chapter 6, the gang had been through so much shit that you'd almost forgotten about Cornwall and Colm O'Driscoll, and their deaths are just shallow, small victories for the gang, which don't resolve anything. In the scene where Arthur opens up to Sister Calderon about his approaching death, he seeks advice from her as to what he should do with his remaining time, and I'll let this clip play out in all its beauty.
What am I gonna do now?
Be grateful that for the first time, you see your life clearly.
Sure.
Perhaps you could help somebody. Helping makes you really happy.
But I still don't believe in nothing.
Often, neither do I.
Huh?
But then I meet someone like you, and everything makes sense.
You're too smart for me, sister. I guess I'm afraid.
There is nothing to be afraid of, Mr. Morgan. Take a gamble that love exists and do a loving act.
Such a beautiful and powerful scene that never fails to give me goosebumps. And knowing that it's this conversation that really inspires Arthur to help John makes it all the more meaningful the second time around. Eventually, I finally got to the ending mission in chapter 6 and I wanted to make Arthur's last day an interesting one. So I treated him by splurging on some sawed-off shotgun, killing some Lemoyne raiders, going to jail, getting broken out of jail by Dutch, taking care of my horse, feeding him well, taking a bath, attempting to visit Blackwater, paying off Arthur's bounties to give him a clean slate, and finally, I thought it'd be nice to visit the location where Arthur would soon die and the location where he would soon be buried. And after all that procrastinating, I pulled myself together at last and started Arthur Morgan's final missions. I'm not going to give you all a blow-by-blow account of what happened like I did in my chapter 6 ending video, because if you're watching this video you should know what happens already. I'm just going to say what generally happened and what I was thinking during some parts. First off, when Arthur, Sadie, Charles and several Wapiti warriors ride out together towards Cornwall, Kerosene and Tar, and the camera zooms out to fit everyone in the frame with the burning oil fields in front of them and the soundtrack which sounds like a whole stadium of people cheering us on, that was a great feeling, similar to the one I described earlier where the whole gang walked up to Braithwaite Manor. But instead of being slow and cool, this was more intense. And as we all ploughed through the army men, I wasn't missing any shots. I felt like Rambo gunning down everybody. Can't say the same for Peeta though, because his dumbass died because we weren't all babysitting him for 2 seconds. Anyway, I got to the infamous part where Dutch slimes his way out of the building and leaves Arthur to die. Look at this prick standing there like a fucking Lego character. Dutch annoyed me a lot in the ending, and it's not just for the reasons you'd think, like when he betrays Arthur, when he listens to Micah and leaves Abigail to die. It was all those snidey, passive-aggressive remarks to Arthur. He even had the nerve to say one to Arthur seconds after he blatantly left him to die. Twat. Anyway, right after that mission, while I was heading back up to the camp to the next mission, I encountered the blind fortune teller man, who said,
"Be warned, sir. Be warned. surrounded by fields of burning fire and flesh, the devil will make his sacrifice.
After looking up what that meant, I found a Reddit post by a user called Lord Tryhard, who believed that the burning fire and flesh was the raid on Cornwall Kerosene and Tar, the devil is Dutch, and the sacrifice is eagle flies. I just found that to be a mad coincidence that out of all the possible fortunes that I could have been told, I got that particular one told to me literally right after I just did that mission. In the next mission, while the gang are riding up to rob the train in Saint Denis, I fucking love how Arthur and John respond to Micah trying to tease them.
Oh, Abigail must be real excited. All packed up like she is. I could just see her in the little grass skirt.
Don't talk to me, you son of a bitch.
Ah, Saint Denis. It's good to be back. Happy memories, huh, John?
Will you shut up, Micah?
Always makes me lol. So to no one's surprise, Dutch's master plan fails and the train doesn't stop at the station and instead goes straight past us, and while trying to chase after it and frantically tapping left shift, the fucking sticky keys shortcut pops up and slows me down, so it takes me forever to get on the train. And I want you to keep this in mind because it's not the only time the sticky keys shortcut foiled my plans during the final missions. When I finally got on the train, I was having a field day cleaning out all the army men, and I got to use the Maxim gun, which is always fun to mow down people with. One hashtag life hack that I found was that if you can't hit the people on the horses, you can just shoot the horses instead, which for some reason you don't lose honor for. Sorry, Peter. So then we get off before the train falls off the bridge, and when Arthur asks where John is, Dutch tells us,
I tried.
Stop the cap. Stop the cap right now! Stop the cap!
Then Tilly comes and tells us that Agent Milton and his men took Abigail to Van Horn to be put on a boat and tried for murder. Dutch pretends to care and then quickly flees with everyone else apart from Arthur and Sadie, who go to Van Horn to try to rescue Abigail. I go god mode up in the lighthouse covering Sadie, only for all my hard work to be wasted because she went and got herself captured by Milton as well. So I quickly piss on all these lads and make my way up to the building, where Arthur goes to free Abigail, only for Agent Milton to kindly greet him. Arthur and Agent Milton struggle for a bit, but Arthur's saved by Abigail, who shoots Milton in the head. I still don't know how she frees herself because Arthur doesn't fully cut her rope off at the start, and it's still on as you can see here, but I'm not complaining because it saved Arthur's life. When Arthur, Abigail and Sadie eventually get to safety and Abigail gives Arthur the key to Dutch's chest where all the money is, the single most beautiful part in this game follows. Arthur's final ride.
Abigail Roberts.
Always was a good thief.
That you was. Go on, get out of here. Yeah.
The many miles we walk, the many things we learn, the building of a shrine, only just to burn. That's the way it is. That's the way it is.
Holy fuck, man. That scene always hits like a fucking truck. Sadness, emptiness, nervousness, nostalgia, and the goosebumps you get are fucking mad. I was thinking of the gang and all the memories Arthur had made with them, all crumbling down now, and it made me think of my entire time playing this game as Arthur, and it just hits so hard. I definitely think it's the most beautiful scene in this entire game, which is saying a lot, and even all the things I just said about it doesn't do it justice to how impactful it is. Anyway, Arthur returns to the camp where a standoff ensues between Arthur, John and Miss Grimshaw and everyone else. Micah kills one of the gang's longest and most loyal members right in front of Dutch's eyes, and then Dutch proceeds to ask who's with him or against him. Then Pinkertons invade the camp and all hell breaks loose. Arthur and John eventually make it up through the caves, and while riding away, one of those bastard Pinkertons shoot my beloved, loyal, gorgeous horse that I've had since the very start of the game when I named him mine in chapter 1. For those of you who watched the first video, you'll know that I wanted to stick with this horse throughout the entire game because it will give me the time to bond and become emotionally attached to it, so that when it died, it would impact me more than on my last playthrough, when I had 3 different horses while playing as Arthur. So did it impact me more this time around? I'd definitely say yes. While I didn't cry like I've seen some people say they did when their horse died, it definitely impacted me, and thinking about it now, I am going to miss that horse. It wasn't the prettiest, fastest or strongest horse, but it was a humble one, and as I said, it stuck with me the entire game, and honestly, I never really felt the need to change it at any stage in the game. So rip to a real day one OG. Fly high, homie. Then it came for the big decision to either help John or go back for the money. A big decision to make, pros and cons to both. It was hard to decide.
I'm coming with you. I'm gonna get you out of this bullshit if it's the last goddamn thing I do.
You really thought for a second there that I was gonna go back for the money? I ain't never gonna leave John like that. Off we went, climbing up the mountain. Arthur eventually can't go any further and says goodbye to John one last time, telling him to be a man and go to his family. Arthur fends off what's left of the Pinkertons. Not gonna lie, I missed a lot of shots here because I could barely see the people I was shooting at, but I was determined not to use Deadeye or switch to another weapon because I didn't want to interrupt the team playing in the background. Micah, being the brave, noble man he is, tackles Arthur from behind and struggles to beat a dying man. After some struggling, Arthur whacks Micah's revolver off Micah's head and the revolver falls to the ground. Arthur goes to crawl to it. Surely he's gonna get it. Micah's not even trying to go for it. It's Arthur's here for the taking.
Nope.
For fuck's sake. Out of all times, twice. So instead of even getting close to the gun, Arthur gets choked out by Micah and gets his head slammed repeatedly onto the ground.
You've lost.
Cheers, Jeff.
So in the middle of this very emotional, very important scene, I have to completely unimmerse myself and go to the settings and turn this poxy fucking sticky keys shortcut off. Anyway, even after all that, when I eventually get to the gun, Dutch steps his crusty ass toes onto Arthur's hand and stops him. Arthur professes again that Micah is a rat, that he gave Dutch all he had and that John was the only one that made it. Dutch takes his first W in weeks by leaving when Micah insists he come with him. When they both leave, Arthur crawls up to the edge of the cliff, looks out to the sunrise for one last time, and dies like a king at the top of the mountain. What a beautiful ending. Nothing could ruin my mood. I'm just gonna save my file now. Second time round. No. No. Yep. Even after seeing that it was clearly the load game section instead of the same game section, literally zooming in on the big capital text saying load game, and then the warning on screen saying, are you sure you want to load this save game data? 3 crystal clear indications that this was going to load over my game instead of saving it. I proceed to load over my save file, which left me exactly where I was 2 hours before. I frantically posted on the Red Dead Redemption subreddit and sent an email to Rockstar support, but after some of the least helpful advice I have ever received in my life, including one lad saying, if you press pause and go into the story menu, you can save your game.
I can't believe I never thought of that.
There was absolutely no way I could get my progress back, and I had to play through the ending again. You may be thinking, after talking so highly about the Red Dead ending, why wouldn't you want to do it again? And it's because the ending is so beautiful and perfect that it's like a treat that you don't want to do too often or too much, or else it will become less special. So what I did was I skipped every cutscene I could, which I was surprised was the majority of cutscenes. I thought that the ones critical to the plot would be unskippable, but you could skip pretty much every cutscene there was. And then when I was doing the actual part of the missions where you could control Arthur, I'd just keep killing myself and skipping to the next checkpoint, or on the horse rides, I'd just go into cinematic mode, which would make my horse move without me having to control it, and I'd alt tab onto another tab. I also had my volume for Red Dead all the way down at 0, and I was playing music in the background to zone myself out as much as I could from it. And with this method, I got through the ending in around an hour, which is about over half the amount of time the ending takes. So yeah, not gonna lie, that really dampened the good mood I was in after finishing chapter 6, and I hope it doesn't make the next time I do the chapter 6 ending feel less special. Here's the video of me saving the file properly. Here we go, fucking 2.5 hours later. I'm such a fucking retard, man. I got it in the end. Just skipped and shit. Here we are. No. Not fucking load game, Noah, from 2.5 hours ago. Fucking save game, you brain dead handicap. I have autosave on as well, so even if I don't do this, but here you are. Just make sure it's save game. Boom. The wheel. Focus, you fuck. Focus, you prick. Yeah, there we are. Did it right this time. Hooray for me. So, there we are. Chapter 6 and my time as Arthur has come to a close for my second playthrough. And before I get started talking about the epilogue and all that, I need to talk more about how little I've been playing this game. I should be shocked for how much I've neglected Red Dead over the past year. Just to put into perspective how little I've played Red Dead on my second playthrough compared to my first playthrough, I started my second playthrough on the 27th of December 2020 and I only finished chapter 6 on the 9th of March 2022. Whereas on my first playthrough, which I started on the 27th of December 2019, I finished chapter 6 on the 4th of April 2020. Not only does this mean that it took me 14 months to get to the same stage that I did in 3 months on my first playthrough, but it also means that there was almost a 2-year gap between the first time I finished chapter 6 and the second time I did. Also, I started chapter 6 on the 20th of August 2021 and only finished it on the 9th of March 2022, meaning that it took me less time to literally 100% the game on my last playthrough than it did to complete a single chapter on my second playthrough. If that doesn't put into perspective just how little I've played this game, nothing will. My time playing Red Dead has been very spaced out the past year. There's been multiple times where I've hopped back on Red Dead for the first time in a month, even 2 months, and said, oh, now that I've gotten Damascus or finished this or that, now I'm going to get back into Red Dead. But I don't. And every time I hop back on this game, I'm at a loss as to why I don't play it more. Because it's such a fucking good game and I enjoy it literally every time I play it. And there's several reasons why I haven't played this game as much as I did on my first playthrough, none of them having anything to do with the actual game, and I talked about them in my first video. But after my last video, where I was talking about why I don't care about COD, I realised the similarity between my second playthrough of Red Dead and playing Vanguard, and that was that with both games, I naively assumed I was going to have the same interest and drive to play them the second time around as I did the first time. With Vanguard, I thought that I'd be able to do another year of COD again like I did the year before with Modern Warfare and Warzone, and didn't really take into mind that I might be burnt out of COD after playing it for a year straight. And with Red Dead, I didn't even consider that there might be another game that I'd prefer to play over Red Dead, which was Modern Warfare and Warzone for the majority of last year, and I thought that would be the exact same as it was in my first playthrough, where I was 100% interested in playing Red Dead every day. But what I failed to realise is that nothing is going to be as good the second time around as it was the first time around, and I feel like especially with Red Dead, I've been so stuck in the past and nostalgia, wondering how I can recreate those times the first time I played this game, that I haven't enjoyed it as much as I could have the second time around, had I just done my own thing. So I really do regret not playing more Red Dead this year, and it definitely has had an impact on my experience playing Red Dead for the second time. With the chapter 6 ending, for example, it was brilliant, don't get me wrong, but it didn't emotionally affect me nearly as much as it did the last time. And obviously it affected me more the first time because I didn't know what was going to happen, but I still wasn't as sad when Arthur died as I was the last time, and just in general, I wasn't emotionally impacted very much by the ending, and to be honest, with the exception of a couple of moments, it just felt like another mission. I wasn't nervous or very excited to play it, and it didn't occupy my mind for the next few days like on my first playthrough. And I think that's definitely because of how spaced out playing Red Dead has been for me in the past year. I haven't been consistent enough with Red Dead for it to become an experience this time like it was last time. I've played it in patches, have sort of treated it like a game to fall back on instead of one of the main games I play, and as a result, I've not really immersed myself into the world of Red Dead, which actually pains me to say. It pains me how I sort of ruined my second playthrough for myself. Even making this video, when I was scripting the part about chapters 4 and 5, I had to think back to months ago, nearly a year ago, and it was really hard to formulate thoughts on how I felt about those chapters, because I'd almost forgotten what I thought about them on my second playthrough. When I look back at Red Dead clips from this time last year, I have to remind myself that those are during the same playthrough I'm doing now. They feel more like they were on my first playthrough. So yeah, I don't want to ramble too much. I'm just really disappointed in myself that I've let this playthrough become such a mess, and I'm making a vow now. I'm actually going to start playing this game properly for the remainder of my playthrough. I'm going to finish the whole epilogue and have the video talking about it up by the end of April at the very least. Trust me on that. Okay, enough crying about how I've sort of ruined this playthrough for myself by not playing it as much as I should. Let's talk about what I enjoyed and the times I did play it. I find it mind-blowing that even after my last playthrough where I had 550 hours played and 100% completion, there's still several things I'm only experiencing for the first time now. I've encountered 2 stranger missions that I vaguely remember but didn't do anything past the first part, which are the Veteran and Wisdom of the Elders, and 1 stranger missions that I've never done or seen before, which was Idealism and Pragmatism for beginners. I swear when I did this mission I thought it was some secret content, because I genuinely couldn't believe that I'd been in Saint Denis hundreds of times and I'd never had that mission pop up on the map before. I also for the first time got the encounter where you take the injured man to the Saint Denis doctor who amputates his arm with a saw. I'd seen it before on YouTube, but it was cool actually getting the encounter firsthand. I just think it's so amazing that I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on this game and there's still encounters, missions and plots that I'm only just discovering, and it makes me want to explore the world more. So, now I'm in the epilogue and I'm actually very excited to start playing as John and experiencing his differences from Arthur, whether it's the more noticeable ones like his voice, or more subtle ones like how his Deadeye animation is different to Arthur. Obviously I prefer Arthur and Arthur will always be my favourite, but it'll still be nice to have a bit of change. One great thing about John is that Honor doesn't change his personality or the events of the game in any way, and it basically doesn't matter at all. So after trying so hard to keep my Honor max with Arthur, I'm just gonna be a bastard now with John. Although one shy thing about playing as John is that he can't swim at all, which is going to be a pain in the arse. But I'm really looking forward to just playing the epilogue in general. Apart from the final mission, nothing hugely significant happens in it, so both of the chapters are just really chill, and after all the chaos that's happened in the past 6 chapters, I'm looking forward to playing some relaxing missions. So thank you so much for watching this video. Long one, I know, and maybe my thoughts came out rambly at times during it, but I just wanted to include absolutely all my thoughts of this playthrough up to now in this video, and since it's been literally a whole year since my last one, I have a lot to say. But nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you watched the entire thing, I appreciate that very much, because I worked really hard on this one. It would mean a lot if you could leave a comment on what you thought about this video, some things you liked about it, some things I could do better, or just give your experience playing Red Dead. The next Red Dead Redemption 2 Revisited video I make is going to be the last one, and I'll be talking about the entire epilogue in that one and my final thoughts on my second playthrough. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Thanks again for watching this video and take care of yourselves.
The many miles we walk, the many things we learn, the building of a shrine